Helping Parents Heal. Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at the Helping Parents Heal meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. And without further ado, I'll pass it back to Terri.
Right. I'm turning a light on. I gotcha. All right. You guys do have the ability to mute. And if you have questions, if you put them in the chat box, that would be good. I think I'd just like to say about Patti that I met Patti. I tried to trace this all back. I had a friend on Facebook that was a friend of a friend. And when my daughter Sheridan passed away, they sent me a link to Patti's Facebook page. And she accepted my friend request, and I followed her. I don't want to cry. We've not met in person. I've not had a reading, but she is always so positive, so loving, so uplifting. Even if it's just a little heart, when I say, I'm feeling bad, just something, she's been there all of this time. And I'm just so pleased that she's here today to share her knowledge of spirit, what they've taught her about the other side. So there you go, Patti.
Yay, that's wonderful, Terri. I know, I was trying to think how long we've even known each other. It's been a while, right?
About almost 6 years.
Yeah. Hard to believe.
Yeah.
So do you have like a question or two for me, or any kind of a platform that you want me to start at or share?
Elizabeth, what do you think? I think I was thinking about it earlier. I think what most parents, the question that I hear the most often is my child okay? What's it like where they're at? There's a lot of concern, especially in the early months, I think. Where is my child? Are they okay? What's it like over there? I think that's the first one, Elizabeth. I don't know if you have something else.
I think that's great. And I also think that if maybe you could just address the fact that all of our kids are exactly the same place, no matter how they pass. I think it's always nice to be able to hear that from someone.
The suicide question comes up a lot.
Well, and everybody's always a little worried. And it's always nice to get that reassurance. So thanks, Terri, and thanks, Patti.
Yeah, you're welcome. Can you hear me just fine?
Yep.
So I have 3 children of my own, 28, 24, and 22. And I have to admit that when I first started doing mediumship readings about 18 years ago, it really wasn't, child loss wasn't really profound to me in my readings because my kids were little and sort of in that space where I guess you don't worry a lot about illness coming on board or a tragic accident, and certainly young children pass. So that was a little bit of my own wall, I suppose, energetically that I had up. But as my kids got older and my oldest started to drive and, one thing led to another where you all of a sudden hear stories as a medium, right? Where you learn about things that you never thought were possible. You hear about the way people lose their life here on this earth and you think, oh my gosh, I mean, I never knew you could get cancer of that organ or in that space in your body. It would have never occurred to me that a simple headache could turn into this or that, or the sign of a high fever that wasn't treated properly could really, you never really spend time thinking, right? Luckily, I mean, we wouldn't want to spend our life here always thinking about the things that could go wrong. But then as I got maybe 10 years into my work, I was invited by a friend who'd lost her only child to develop a group called Light Beyond Loss. And it was just for moms. And I found myself really, after our first 3-day retreat, I found myself having a very difficult time coming back from the grief that I was just immersed in. We had 11 moms, and one mother had only lost her daughter 40 days before the retreat. And I all of a sudden thought, this is a place where I want to find a home, because I am such an empath. Not all mediums, believe it or not, are empathic, which is a funny thing to hear. But I know a lot of mediums that are very linear, especially men. And it's not to say that all male mediums are not in touch with the very empathic side, but that's just the male energy, right? They think more practically. And I found myself in a real quagmire, would be the only word for it. I just didn't know how to, negotiate, if you will, with the other side, how I could manage to bring their messages to their loved ones and really stay afloat emotionally myself. And so that led me to more research on where these kids, no matter how old they are, they're still your kid, right? No matter, I wanted to know where were they specifically, and was it any different from all of the energy that I had channeled for so many years before? And I learned that there was a little bit of a different energy for these kids, and it was changing also by about the time they turned 21, similarly as we have here, where there's this progression, right, where you can do all the things when you're 21. And I saw that there was a change, and the other side has different categories, if you will, so that when someone leaves, you're welcomed into a space where you're immediately comfortable. And so I'm going to make an analogy here. If your 8th grader has to go back to school and they're welcomed into the pre-K class, they're not going to be very happy about it, right? And if the pre-K child passes away and they're welcomed into the senior high class, they're not going to be very happy about it. And so what I learned was that the guardian angels that support each one of us since our conception make sure that as they escort us into the spirit realm, the afterlife, heaven, whatever you're comfortable calling it, they're sure to make you welcome into a space where you're going to feel immediately at home. And when I talked to the deceased, interviewed, if you will, a few of my clients' children about their experience, this was something that started to be really profound to me, and I had never really thought about it before. And so all of a sudden, I was just immersed in this whole new language, if you will, of where these kids were going and how they were, maneuvering their life over there. And so it was profound to me in the way that I could help other people to heal. And I think that the healing part for all of you is in understanding on any kind of level that you can, where your kids are, and that you're going to be reunited with them in the future. I just want to make sure that you can still hear me because my screen went black. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're good, Patti.
I'm good. Okay. And so if that all makes sense, and I don't want to put words into anybody's mouth, Terri, do you agree with that? That really feeling like you understand where your daughter is has been one level that's helped you to heal?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And then she's progressed on her own.
But also, Patti, one of the most important things that helps us heal is knowing that they're with us every step of the way, and
Absolutely.
that they never leave us. And I think that that's something that is one of the most healing things for me. Plus that they're all together. They're all having a blast. So when we're in a meeting like this, they're also having fun together. And I think it's so fascinating about what you say about the different ages, because I can see that, I could imagine that. But then as they progress, they can actually come through at whatever age they want to. Is that correct? Like they could be younger, so it's easier for us to recognize them, or they
That's a
could
good question, yeah.
they actually are. Is that
Yes, I've certainly done a lot of readings for parents that have lost babies at birth and infants and, you know, children that weren't linguistic yet, who definitely take on the persona of having a language of their own and a different personality than their parents remembered them as having because they were nonverbal when they passed away. But that goes the same for people who are handicapped or, you know, can't speak for whatever reasons, or people that aren't sighted or can't hear. You know, that's sort of a category that their angels, again, and the guides that work with us as mediums help us, whether it's a language barrier or whatever it might be, that we can understand fully the communication that they want to give us. But I think what's important today for me,
Wait, can I go back to what you're saying? This is such a fascinating thing. I have been told by so many mediums that special needs children are the rock stars of the afterlife, and that they are protected and guided even more than everyone else while they're here, and greeted when they get back just as a rock star, because they chose to live this life that was difficult for anyone. Any normal person would have difficulty doing that with such grace and beauty. And anyway, I'm asking that because I have quite a few friends who actually have children in spirit who are special needs children, and then they are able to communicate with them. And I actually find that many times they can communicate even more quickly because they were already communicating non-verbally before they passed with their parents. Do you feel that? Have you heard anything like that?
If I'm honest with you, and I would be on every occasion, I've never seen the difference, honestly, in the spirit being greeted with any different form of welcoming. What I know to be true is what you said earlier, that certainly special needs people, without any doubt to me, in their living life have more spirit guide and guardian angel help around them. And so those are still the energies that are escorting them to the spirit realm. But a minute we pass and the breath is out of us and the soul is moving on to its own journey, there's no longer any infirmity of any kind whatsoever. So that is very surprising often to families when they come in. If the child was missing a leg and they're telling me that they're running and that they weren't sighted and now they're talking about all the visuals, that's such a relief, you know, no matter who it is, really, especially though when it's your child. Again, we use the word child and I always get stuck in it because I've been able to offer readings for parents. I just did a reading this morning for an 88-year-old woman and her 57-year-old daughter, and that's the exact age of my mom and me. And it really hit home, you know, that's very difficult for an aging parent to lose their child, of course, you know, always your child. And so what seems important to me is that we understand that there's only one way to keep our kids close or to keep our loved ones in spirit close to us after they're gone. And that is to really search into our faith about what we believe to be true in the afterlife. And aside from that, I really can't encourage you to do anything else as strongly as I would encourage you to read books on the afterlife, to envision in your mind's eye when you go into meditation or prayer to talk to your child about signs that they might give you about where they would be, and for you to even imagine the things, if they could have all their dreams come true, you know, maybe it's a house by the ocean or in the mountains, or a certain person that they love that's passed away, a celebrity maybe that they want to be, you know, around at their concerts, or an instrument they want to learn to play. The list is so long, but I really encourage my parents to dig in as deeply as you can to the idea that if heaven is a place that's actually, as far as I've experienced, is actually quite close. When you scientifically try and connect with the energy that a medium connects with, or a clairvoyant, or anyone in the work where they're really channeling spirit, the energy is quite close. I know that it's been written that it's maybe 3 building stories up away from the Earth's surface where the energy vibrates and connects to the channel. And so I think oftentimes we think of the afterlife as this great beyond, you know, where you lie on your back on a beautiful summer day and look at the puffy clouds and you think about heaven being somewhere beyond that. And I can remember when I was young, flying on an airplane for the first time by myself and looking, asking the stewardess back in those days, are we flying through heaven, and do you think we're going to hurt anybody? And she kind of looked at me like I was insane, but you know, it felt like that, right? Like this very nondescript place. And I really wanted to be able to see visually. And there's an amazing book that I found difficult to get through by Deepak Chopra called Life After Death. And Deepak talks about how whatever your reality would be in this life is what you will be greeted by when you leave. And it was a little hard for me because he talked on one chapter about atheism. And I thought, oh, I didn't want that to be true. You know, I didn't want, if someone was atheistic here, for them not to be greeted by any energy in the afterlife. But he gets into, you know, some very deep stuff on that. We're not here to talk specifically about that. But it made sense to me because I was raised a Catholic. I went to a Christian college. They don't put me in their alumni magazine anymore. And then I moved into a very deep understanding of the spiritual realm. And it gave me such hope to understand that if I was a Jew and that was my life here and everything that I celebrated was greeted to me on the other side, or whether I was a Catholic or Hindu, you know, the list is long. If I celebrated, you know, as a Native American, you know, whatever it is, if that's what's greeting me immediately so that I feel comforted. And the thing that I want to remind you that has been so consistent in all of my readings for all these years is that whatever it is you love the very most, whoever it is you love the very most that's passed away, the music, the colors, the sounds, the animals, the wildlife, the scenery, you know, like I said, whether it's lake or ocean or mountain, whatever it is you love the very most is what starts to greet as you're going through the tunnel, leaving this life. And I think what's more important is that, to what you were talking about, Elizabeth, the healing happens immediately as soon as the soul is discharged from the physical body. And so there's no fear anymore. And sometimes I think that's very difficult because as grieving parents, you're way down here, right? When you're in the middle of your loss and you're in such grief, you can't get your energy up, you can't sleep, you're having a very difficult time eating, it's hard to laugh at a joke or even have a normal day where you can just be a normal person, right? And yet now that your loved one has crossed into that realm, they're living their absolute best energetic existence. And so you have to go through the steps of grief. Every psyche has to go through the steps of grief. But I also believe that you can, if you have the right support, and you guys have an awesome channel here of support, if you have the right support, you can expedite some of the stations of grief. Instead of allowing yourself to stay stuck, you can remind yourself that the more you raise your energy, the closer you're going to get to your loved one. And the higher your vibration is, the easier it is for them to connect with you and leave you signs. Because if your child knows, when I leave a quarter heads up for my mom, when I have a random Snickers wrapper, which was a reading for me this morning, that's stuck in the couch, all of the signs that people give us, if I know that every time I give her that quarter, that feather, whatever it might be, she's disabled the rest of the day because she's so upset by it, because she's now reminded of me, as opposed to, oh my God, every time my mom gets that quarter, she's like crazy the rest of the day. She's so excited. She has to tell everybody, oh my gosh, so-and-so gave me another quarter today. we just want to remind ourselves, as hard as our grief is, we have to remind ourselves that our separation from our loved ones is temporary, that they're no longer in any physical pain, they're no longer in any emotional pain. It doesn't matter whether their life was cut short due to a suicide. Suicide is the result of a mental illness, which has nothing to do with the soul's energy whatsoever. You know, all of the religious things that layer on us through our life that can make us very fearful of whether our loved one is safe. I want to really encourage you that I have never found any of that to be true. I have never found any of that to be true. There is one caveat, if I have the time to tell you about when it comes up, and I do, when it comes up to taking your own life. I can remember when my father's best friend passed away, and he had called my dad for 6 nights in a row, threatening to take his life. And my dad went to him every night for 6 nights in a row. And on the 7th night, my father told him he couldn't come. And on the 7th night, he took his life and was successful. And I can remember being 7 years old, sitting in Mass, kneeling down, actually. My father crying as the priest prayed for his soul, because of Catholicism, you don't have a get through, you know, what is it on Monopoly, you know, get out of jail free card is not in the Catholics' mindset back then. And I can remember starting to cry myself, empathic, next to my dad. We left, my father loved a good reason to leave Mass. He took me outside, and what's the matter? He said, you know, I'm crying for Uncle Martin, but what are you upset about? And I was furious. I said, I can't believe Father so-and-so, well, he's long dead, Father Sullivan is wondering if Uncle Marty got into heaven or not. If Uncle Marty was so upset that he did this, how could God not welcome him in? And of course, my father was, you know, a little bit surprised that his 7-year-old Irish Catholic daughter was bringing up such an elevated conversation, right? But that stuck with me because it was a download, I really feel, in that moment, that I realized if there's anyone welcomed immediately and quickly into the arms of Creator God, it would be someone who is so upset in this life and disabled that they take their own life. And that's something that I don't want to say that suicidality creates a different response in heaven, but I do know that there is a cocooning that happens to the soul that has taken their life because they're in so much grief because of the grief they've caused. But this isn't just people who maybe have a quick form of suicide that we think of, all of the tough things we think of. This could also be someone that drove drunk and ended their life that night. This could be someone that slowly used something that disabled their physical body and took them. There aren't those lines of separation on the other side. So there's a lot of ways that people end their life, right? Some are very quick and some are very, very slow. But the cocooning can sometimes prevent you from really feeling a connection to your loved one after they've gone, because they are held in a space with the guardian angels in charge of their soul's journey on the other side, until which time they can feel healed enough to sort of unwrap the cocoon and come back out and start communicating more fully with their loved ones. I hope that helps a little bit.
My understanding of that is that they are greeted with so much love because, you know, especially because they've been in so much pain. And then at some point in time, learn the lessons that came from that, and shown where they could have made a different choice, you know, and how it. So I want to go back for just a minute. I think Elizabeth asked this too, kind of. I've seen, how do I do this? Because I have some clairvoyance abilities that run in my family. I've seen Sheridan. She was 15 when she passed. I've seen her at the age of 6. I've seen her at the age of 21, which she would be now. So this is kind of a two-part question. I know parents have asked is, are they progressing on the other side? Are they growing up? And the second part of that question is, if I hear from Sheridan, if I get some input from her, there's been a couple of times where she's actually teaching me something. but she, you know, where her level of spiritual advancement, you know, her progression over these past few years, that she is growing as a soul as well. So do they just take, they have the ability, my understanding, just take on what we need at the time? Maybe I needed to see her at 6 years old and give me a hug, you know what I mean? And then I saw her at her normal time as well. What's your experience with that?
I'll give you a fun story that I think you guys will appreciate. I know that throughout my career as a medium, one of my favorite things is to hear other mediums tell their stories about, you know, things that have happened to them during readings. So about 5 years ago, I was doing a reading and the woman was elderly. I always love to read people that are 70 and beyond. They bring a very different energy to the reading. She was elderly and I thought she had lost a son because the energy of who came through looked like he might have been 13, 14 years old. And he was playing baseball. I shared this with her and I could tell immediately she was getting a little misty. If you guys have seen Field of Dreams, where the old baseball player, right, comes in with James Earl Jones and Kevin Costner into the little Volkswagen bus. I can't think of the actor who he then becomes when he's older. But there he is, and he's got his little sack over his back, you know, with the tied to the stick, like super old school, right? It all of a sudden became that, and I described it to her, and she really came undone. And so I had to ask her what was going on, and she said to me, "I really don't need for you to do any more with this reading. I can leave now." And I got a little scared, thinking she was upset with me, and she goes, no. She said, "You just told me that my husband came through because she said her father-in-law was killed in a car accident when her husband was only 12, and he was the oldest of 7 children. And he never went back to school after his dad died. They were from Indiana, and they had moved to Boston many years later, but he had never gone back to school. He had to stay and help his mom run the farm. He had to diaper and change and feed and all of his siblings, et cetera, et cetera. And he would say to his wife, he became an attorney and had a beautiful, big, abundant life. But he would say to his wife, "If heaven is real, I'm going to get to play ball with my brothers and sisters and all of my friends when I get to heaven," because he never got to play. And he always aspired that he might be, you know, a big ball player back in those days. And so that was so profound to me that day, because I realized what a gift it was for him to show me him at that age, and me transferring that image to her was so profound, because that's all she could have hoped for. She said when he died is that he could be a kid again, because he was 87 when he died. And so the answer would be, there's no time in heaven. There's no clock. There's no calendar. There's no counting minutes. I mean, eternity is a long time, right? So if you were looking at the watch for that, you'd probably get a little frustrated. And so they morph, you know, energetically to what feels right. And I certainly have channeled a lot of kids that have passed at Sheridan's age and younger that come through much older, because they always wanted to know what it might feel like to be a grown-up, or what it might look like to be a grown-up. And certainly the people that I've channeled who were in their 80s, 90s, and beyond come through oftentimes in their 30s and 40s. They call it the Rat Pack years to me, you know, when living was good and they felt really full of life. But you don't have to stay any certain way on the other side, right? Because you really don't have a physical body. You just have a soul's perception of the body, right? So it reminds me a little of Disney World. If you guys have been to Disney World or Disneyland, and you go to the Haunted Mansion and you're in the car and you can look down and see all the souls, the ghosts dancing around. That's very much how it feels to me, is that I see them 3-dimensionally, but I know that I could put my hand right through the energy. So they can be many places at once, which is also another question I get a lot from parents and clients, you know. Can they be with me and my husband, or me and my brother, or me and their sister at the same time? And the answer would be yes. The soul has no limitations whatsoever on traveling or anything like that. So it's an enviable place, honestly. This is the hardest part, what we're doing right now, the living part here is the hardest part.
Thank
Living
you.
out.
Great.
Yeah.
I think I said that I was talking to Anna DeSimone earlier. Galen, Anna and I were taking a class together, but I said, we must have really thought that we were spiritual bad. You know, I'm going to come here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I said, when we get on the other side together, when we cross over, remind me, I don't want to come back here and do this again.
No, you don't. And you won't have to,
Right.
you know? Yeah. I mean, I feel like, the toughest thing for so many of us when someone leaves, especially when it's your child, is the woulda, shoulda, coulda. You know, it's the feeling of, why didn't I call them? Why didn't I believe them? Why didn't I get them into rehab? Why didn't I try another doctor? Why didn't I stay up all night Googling everything I could? Why did I leave the hospital that morning? You know, like there are so many things that we go over. And what the spirit always tells me is that they wish their loved one could stop arguing with reality, because the reality is that they have left. And we spend a lot of time as human beings fighting with the reality. You know, if only the drunk driver hadn't been there, if only they hadn't been addicted, if only they hadn't gotten the cancer. You know, there's so many things, if only. And from their point now that they're in spirit and they're healed, they're wishing that they could send us and extend to us how perfect it is for them there, instead of imagine how hard it is, right? When we're in the spirit realm and we're looking down at our loved ones and seeing how upset they are. I used to be an actress a million years ago, and I played Emily in Our Town by Thornton Wilder for 8 weeks at a small community theater house. And this was long before I knew that I had any gifts. And as I look back, and if you don't know it, you can read the synopsis of Our Town. It's all about the death of a young girl in childbirth and her wishing she could come back. And even though all of the spirits say to her, oh, no, you don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. She begs, and she just have one day where she can come back. And she picks a birthday. She says it'll be like any other day, no big deal. And when she comes back, what she realizes is the pain is in how little we're paying attention to the beauty of each simple day. And she's listening to the dog snoring and the clock is ticking and the birds are in the tree, and she smells her mother's fresh coffee and a certain flower outside the window. And she's drinking this all in like she's won the lottery. Every single thing, you know, it's like, oh my God, and now mama's coffee and this and this and this, you know. And yet we have that every day often, right? The beauty of our life here. And it's very difficult when you're in grief to find the beauty in it. And it's difficult when you're just doing your thing. You know, we often forget and deny, you know, the beauty of it. So that's the lesson for me from the other side that's profound, is they're almost begging us to recognize that we can find heavenly spaces here if we allow ourselves to connect with them in such a way where we're always reminded our separation from them is temporary.
Does anybody have a question? Patty's time is a little bit limited here, so does anybody want to ask any questions? Like, you can unmute yourself. There's not that many of us here, so. Galen, you can just unmute yourself if you like. Oh, still can't hear you. Okay,
I
it
could.
says, can
Yeah.
you see it? It says, Patty, do you have any particular tips for parents trying to connect with their kids? I practice daily and have to find patience because the connections don't come through.
I would give it a break. I think when the connection seems unstable, it's much like the internet. You know, when you look and you don't see the bars, you have to walk away from it and do something else for a while. And then unexpectedly you look at your phone or your computer and all of a sudden the bars are back. So I teach on connection to the deceased, and that's really the most profound thing that they've taught me, is that there's no real rhyme or reason to when they're going to come through for us. But I also feel like it's important that we understand that they are the biggest teachers in our growth spiritually. And sometimes we lean too strongly on them and on their messages, and you can muddle the energy by trying too hard. So my advice would be to find something that works for you to calm you down and allow you to feel connected to your loved ones. So whether it's, the smell of a t-shirt you still have, or it's a picture that you can hold in a frame, and a song that they love that you can play that always, brings a smile to your face. Do the things that make you feel joy, and let them surprise you with the way that they'll show you the connection. I think that's really, because I've been there, not with child loss, but certainly I've lost 3 of my very dearest friends at young ages. And I so appreciate the idea that they go quiet and you wonder, have I lost my touch? I also, if I can, will let you guys know, if you want to go to my website, I authored a deck of cards many years ago that are 44 messages from your loved ones in spirit that allows you to have a connection without needing to be with a medium. And so
I'd like to say something about that, by the way.
Yeah.
I was Patti had offered me in the beginning of my journey to come to one of her workshops in New Hampshire, and at the time it wasn't economically feasible I wasn't working. However, she sent me a deck of her mediumship cards, and they sit with my crystals and my airy fairy stuff, I guess people call it. They sit there, and every once in a while I get that little nudge to get, if I can't, people that know me know that my daughter's very creative in the way she gets in touch with me. I got in my car one day and a dime dropped on my head from inside my car, so it's crazy stuff. But those cards, I'll walk by and I'll be feeling bad and I'll just ask a question and I'll pick up the deck and shove it. The card will fall out and the card will be a direct answer to my question. So it's, there's so many different tools, and that's one that I use. I don't use it every day because I don't think she wants to talk to me every day, every minute. She's expecting me to heal and keep moving. But man, sometimes I open, I'm like, really? The message is right there. It's a really powerful tool. It's just another way that they can communicate.
And Terri, I wanted to offer a discount to the group. So if they just let my husband know in the email for the request for the deck that they're a part of this group, the
Are
fee
you
will be
still doing readings or workshops, or what? I wasn't sure what you were doing, what you weren't.
Yeah, all my private sessions are done over the phone for the past 3 months. I'm actually probably going to give up my office. I've decided after 3 months of paying rent and not being able to see anybody, I'm probably going to just stick with the phone sessions. I usually only read one person over the phone, but I do have a caveat for parents in grief. If they want to call together and put me on speakerphone or via FaceTime, that's fine too.
So you would do a group reading? Okay.
2 people.
2.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay.
2 people. Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Elizabeth, you have any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, when we had our conference, we had a really wonderful evidential medium who taught everyone how to use a pendulum. Do you have any thoughts about that? And maybe could you just say something about that? Do you ever use a pendulum, or do you know parents who do?
Yeah, I work with a woman named Melissa Pierce. Her website is touchedbyahorse.com. If there are any equestrians in your group. Melissa is an equine healer, and she's quite remarkable. She's out in Colorado, and she and I have worked together quite a few times, and she loves the pendulum work. My roots are very, I have a minor in theology, and my roots are very based in my faith and my spirituality, and I've never really been drawn to the pendulum. And I feel like if we want a yes answer and we're getting a no, or if we want a no answer and we're getting a yes, sometimes the ego really gets in the way, and we almost create a level. This is my personal experience. I feel like I create a level of fear to even use it because I'm like, oh, please don't let it say yes, you know? And so I've leaned more in tangible items like, oracle cards or, you know, angel cards through guidance like that. And I really am a very, very big believer in developing your own language of signs. I use a lot of spiritual numerology because everything in life comes down to math. And so I really recognize the way spirit tries to talk to me through numbers. And I never walk through a parking lot without investigating almost every license plate that I'm parked around. I look for bumper stickers. I look for stuff on the ground. There's not a sign that gets away from me, and spirit knows that. And sometimes the spirit realm can be very frustrated with us because they're sort of like doing the da 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 da, you know, right in front of our face, and we're missing it. You know, we're just like, I had a lady the other day, every time she goes out to a restaurant, she gets a waitress named Alice. And Alice isn't a really peculiar name, but it's an old school name. It's not that familiar. And, you know, as I brought this up to her about the waitress named Alice in the session, you know, she was taken aback because of the evidence of it. But that was her mom's name. She worked at a diner in New York City for 27 years. And she said, oh my God, do you think that's my mom trying to get me a message? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, your poor mother, all these years, like she's putting like 18-year-old girls in front of you named Alice, and you didn't think it was her? You know, so it's just funny how sometimes it's like, hello, you know, and I like to think of our loved ones just in a perpetually great mood, you know, and it's that annoying friend when you're having a really shitty day that's in this fabulous mood, you know, and those are our deceased loved ones. They're just always on fire for our life to be as joyful and as abundant as it possibly can be. And that's what they want for us, you know, and we can't pray to our deceased loved ones, but you can ask them to extend the exact same energy from heaven as they would have extended to you if they were here. And they are really happy to comply. And they have a lot of connection to higher sources of energy. They're much closer to the angels and Creator God, of course, than we are. So they're a really good helping source.
They're very creative.
Could you also
say really quick?
Oh,
I had the other day, I was complaining I wasn't getting any signs, you know, my butterflies or the hummingbirds or whatever. And my grandson's 21 now, sent me a link to join Snapchat, which I've never used before. And so I accepted, and then I had a friend suggestion. And it was the avatar was blonde hair with, it looked just like my daughter, freckles and all, everything. And she was Miss Infinity and beyond. And I know Elizabeth will know. My daughter always said, I love you to infinity. So I clicked on it. There was no person there.
Oh my God.
Not even a real thing. And I was I was like, how do you do this? But you know, sometimes it's where you least expect it. It's not right in your face. But Sheridan, you know, and I'm sure your children will always use their personality to get through. And she's got a sense of humor. She's like, you just want a butterfly? Look at this. I can do this over here. So one quick question for you, Patty, from Maria. She said, I've asked my son out loud to give me signs that are obvious. I see butterflies during my walks. I feel the big, beautiful ones are him. I say thank you. I know others ask for him too. I've asked him if it's okay to go to others if needed. Oh, I've asked him, told him it's okay to go to others if needed. Can I spread him too thin by asking him for so much?
You absolutely cannot. We are void of an ego. Once we leave this life, we still have our human characteristics. So we can be a smart ass, and we can be funny, and we can be angry about something that we wouldn't have liked if we found out it was happening here. But the truth is there's no human anger or human frustration. Any ego-based human thought doesn't exist on the other side. Although when they come through to a medium, they can show those characteristics. Because if you had an Uncle Charlie who was a real jackass and he comes through to the medium like a sweetheart, you're going to think, that's not my Uncle Charlie, you know? So the best thing a medium could say is, your Uncle Charlie's a real jackass. And you're like, yes, he is, you know? And so the answer would be, you can never spread them too thin. It's sort of like when your child is here or your loved one is here and you're holding them close and you're kiss, 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 you know, like we used to do to our kids when they were babies, you know. They understand your need for a close connection to them. And so I don't want any of you listening to ever worry that you can wear them out or that they get frustrated with you, because they absolutely do not.
Can
You're
I
so
ask
welcome.
one other question? I know that Sheridan and Morgan work together, and from what I understand, all of our kids teach each other and help each other to communicate with us as we're teaching each other and helping each other to communicate with them. Is that your impression as well?
I have done a lot of readings on kids who knew each other here. We have right here in Connecticut, one high school that's lost 16 kids in an 8-year time span. It's really very profound. And there were 6 kids in one group that left in the matter of 4.5 years. I mean, it's been written up. It's just kind of almost like a Bermuda Triangle type of situation. And the amount of unity that I saw with those kids over the years has absolutely blown my mind. Kids that didn't, you know, they knew each other at the high school, but they didn't really know each other, you know, and the lessons that they brought through, and the way that when one mom will get a message that she knows is one of the other kids, and the way that heals her, I suppose would be like, you know, and Terri all these years, or anybody else on the call, and you feeling like, oh my gosh, I saw the green apple dragonfly today, and I know that's a sign for, you know, whomever it is. If you're anything like me, it's exciting to get a message remotely for someone else. And so I can't say that I've always seen it to be consistently true, but getting back to being greeted to the other side and welcomed into the pre-K or the 8th grade or the senior high or the college class, they certainly congregate together in ways in which they can help to spread the light of faith, is what they say it is. You know, there's like it's almost like a hall that they talk about on the other side. We call it Wisdom Hall or Faith Hall, where there are groups that congregate on a daily basis. Again, hard to talk about human time, because they don't have it. But it's quite an amazing facility, very tall building with probably as many as 100 classrooms. And the entire point of all of it is for the souls that are there to find ways that they can spread faith and wisdom and encouragement to those of us here on the planet. So it's pretty cool to watch.
I think Sheridan called it a hall of learning. It was like a big white
hall of learning.
hall of
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah, there's a lot of names for it, and I would think that's probably the same place. Yeah, awesome. Can't wait. Well, I can wait.
I know,
wait.
Patty, I know you're pressed for time, Patty. If you guys want to stay and talk for a few, we could do that.
I'm sorry, I have to scoop.
I know you do. Patty's website is pattisinclair.com. I put it in the chat box. She's offering a discount for our parents for her mediumship cards, if that's something that interests you. Like I said, I've used them for a tool. Sometimes they sit there for a couple weeks, sometimes, you know, a couple times a week, but they're pretty cool. I have to tell you, it's a pretty cool tool. So Patty, thank you so much for taking time to do this. I really appreciate it. And I know Elizabeth, if you guys get in touch so we can do the healing thing, and would love to have you involved with that as well.
I would love to.
Or let the parents that you know, let them know as well.
While we were here,
How can we order the discounted cards? Deborah asked.
I just wanted to say that my sister came in and slid a pin onto the bed. Apparently I'm supposed to wear this. We're all wearing a pin out to dinner.
Oh.
But I've never seen this pin. I'm going to ask about it, but if you can see it.
Oh, wow.
This is the pin that I'm being asked to wear. All right. Oh, okay. So they're telling me it was my Auntie Ruth's.
Wonderful.
And so I never worn a butterfly pin, and I love that happened tonight. So
right now, right.
If you go to the website, I'm going to have, if you give us till Monday, Michael will put up a special link for the cards, or you can email Michael at pattisinclair.com and say you'd like to get the cards and you're part of this group and just name it. So the cards are normally 25. Terry, did I tell you 15 or 10 or I don't know what?
I think you said 10.
Yeah, let's go.
Yep,
Let's go with that. And anyone that would want to get a private reading, I'd also like to offer a $25 discount off the price of the reading. They're 90 minutes, and we can do them either by FaceTime or just on the phone, however you're most comfortable.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much,
Patty,
You're
thank
so
you. And I
welcome.
just want to say, this is recorded, so we're going to upload it to YouTube.
I'll be on YouTube.
So will this also be valid for people who will be seeing this a little later?
As long as they're a part of your group, absolutely.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. And thanks for
welcome.
speaking to us today.
Maria says, everybody's saying thank you. Maria said these Zooms are such a gift, and thank you very much, Patty. We appreciate it. I know you have to run, so
yeah, out we go. For my mom's favorite, we're going to sit outside for the first time and have dinner. So
wonderful. Wonderful.
I'm sending you all the blessings of at least 1 million angels, and my prayer is that your children will make themselves known to you in every new way, each and every day. So sending you so much love.
All right. Blessings, Patty. Thank you.
Thank you, honey. Bye, everybody.
If anybody else wants to talk, stand and talk with Elizabeth or myself, you can unmute yourself, and if you have any questions about helping parents heal, what we're doing, what's upcoming. Elizabeth's got, you might tell them about our healing session, Elizabeth, in case they didn't see it. You're muted.
There we go. On Tuesday, Irene is speaking, and she's going to be speaking about her healing journey with Helping Parents Heal and with Carly. And then on Wednesday, we have this healing session for COVID.